Have you ever wondered what it feels like to stand alone against the devastating power of an entire empire? Imagine for a moment that you are stripped of all weapons, all armies, and all worldly support. You are standing in the opulent, intimidating court of a man who does not just claim to be a king, but claims to be God himself. A man who holds the power of life and death over millions, whose word is law, and whose anger is a death sentence. Now imagine that your only shield against this terrifying might is a simple wooden staff and a message that seems impossible to believe. Would your heart tremble? Would your voice shake? Or would you find a courage that transcends the physical world? This is not just a story of the past. It is the ultimate blueprint of how faith dismantles tyranny. Welcome to Divine Sagas, where today we journey back to the golden sands of ancient Egypt to witness the most dramatic confrontation in human history, the day a shepherd challenged a god-king. History is often written by the victors, but this story was written by the creator of history himself. It is a narrative that has echoed through the corridors of time, teaching us that appearance is an illusion, and that true power belongs only to the one who controls the beating of our hearts. We often look at the world today, at the injustice, the oppression, and the overwhelming odds stacked against the truth, and we ask ourselves, is there any hope? Can one person really make a difference? To answer this, we must transport ourselves to a time when the Nile flowed red with blood of innocence, and the sky over Egypt was darkened by the shadow of one man's ego. This is the story of Musa, AS, and Pharaoh, a clash not just of men, but of light against darkness, humility against arrogance, and the finite against the infinite. Let us set the scene. Egypt was the superpower of the ancient world. Its architecture was unmatched, its military invincible, and its wealth unimaginable. At the pinnacle of this civilization sat Pharaoh, a tyrant whose arrogance had swelled to such grotesque proportions that he looked upon his people and declared, "I am your Lord, the Most High." It was a society suffocating under the weight of his delusion. The children of Israel were enslaved, their backs broken by labor, their sons slaughtered in their infancy, and their dignity stripped away. It was a world devoid of hope, a world where the darkness seemed permanent. But it is often in the deepest darkness that the brightest light is kindled. Far away from the palaces of Egypt, in the quiet, rugged solitude of the desert of Madian, a man was being prepared. He was not a prince surrounded by guards anymore. He was a shepherd, weathered by the sun, humbled by nature, and purified by silence. Musa, AS, had fled Egypt as a fugitive, fearful and uncertain, but he was about to return as a messenger of the Almighty. The transformation began on a cold, dark night. Have you ever found yourself lost in the darkness, seeking just a flicker of warmth or guidance? Musa was traveling with his family, lost in the wilderness, when he saw a fire in the distance. It was a mundane human need, the need for warmth and direction, that led him to the sacred valley of Taha. He told his family to wait, promising to bring back a firebrand or perhaps find some guidance. Little did he know, he was walking toward a destiny that would reshape the world. As he approached the fire, the silence of the desert was shattered not by the crackling of wood, but by a voice that commanded absolute awe. "O Musa, verily I am your Lord." Can you imagine the trembling of the human soul in that moment? To stand in the presence of the divine light, to hear words that no ear had ever heard. The staff in his hand, a simple tool for leaning and herding sheep, was about to become the instrument of God's will. He was commanded to cast it down, and in a terrifying instant, the wood transformed into a writhing, living serpent. Fear, raw and human, gripped him. He turned to flee, but the lesson was immediate. Fear nothing but Allah. When you hold on to the rope of Allah, even a snake becomes a servant. This encounter was the forging of a prophet. He was given two signs, the staff that became a snake and his hand that shone with a brilliant, blinding white light, not from leprosy,
but from divine Nur. But with these miracles came a command that would shake the bravest of men. Go to Pharaoh. Indeed, he has transgressed. Consider the weight of this order. Musa was a wanted man in Egypt. He had a speech impediment. He had no army, and he was being sent to the most ruthless dictator on earth to demand the liberation of an entire nation. It sounds like a suicide mission. And here lies the first profound lesson for us. When we are faced with our own pharaohs, our addictions, our fears, our oppressors, or our impossible situations, we ask ourselves, is there any hope? Can one person really make a difference? To answer this, we must transport ourselves to a time when the Nile flowed red with the blood of innocence, and the sky over Egypt was darkened by the shadow of one man's ego. This is the story of Musa, A.S., and Pharaoh, a clash not just of men, but of light against darkness, humility against arrogance, and the finite against the infinite. Let us set the scene. Egypt was the superpower of the ancient world. Its architecture was unmatched, its military invincible, and its wealth unimaginable. At the pinnacle of this civilization sat Pharaoh, a tyrant whose arrogance had swelled to such grotesque proportions that he looked upon his people and declared, "I am your Lord, the Most High." It was a society suffocating under the weight of his delusion. The children of Israel were enslaved, their backs broken by labor, their sons slaughtered in their infancy, and their dignity stripped away. It was a world devoid of hope, a world where the darkness seemed permanent. But it is often in the deepest darkness that the brightest light is kindled. Far away from the palaces of Egypt, in the quiet, rugged solitude of the desert of Madian, a man was being prepared. He was not a prince surrounded by guards anymore. He was a shepherd, weathered by the sun, humbled by nature, and purified by silence. Musa, A.S., had fled Egypt as a fugitive, fearful and uncertain, but he was about to return as a messenger of the Almighty. The transformation began on a cold, dark night. Have you ever found yourself lost in the darkness, seeking just a flicker of warmth or guidance? Musa was traveling with his family, lost in the wilderness, when he saw a fire in the distance. It was a mundane human need, the need for warmth and direction, that led him to the sacred valley of Taha. He told his family to wait, promising to bring back a firebrand or perhaps find some guidance. Little did he know, he was walking toward a destiny that would reshape the world. As he approached the fire, the silence of the desert was shattered not by the crackling of wood, but by a voice that commanded absolute awe. "O Musa, verily I am your Lord." Can you imagine the trembling of the human soul in that moment? To stand in the presence of the divine light, to hear words that no ear had ever heard. The staff in his hand, a simple tool for leaning and herding sheep, was about to become the instrument of God's will. He was commanded to cast it down, and in a terrifying instant, the wood transformed into a writhing, living serpent. Fear, raw and human, gripped him. He turned to flee, but the lesson was immediate. Fear nothing but Allah. When you hold on to the rope of Allah, even a snake becomes a servant. This encounter was the forging of a prophet. He was given two signs, the staff that became a snake and his hand that shone with a brilliant, blinding white light, not from leprosy, but from divine Nur. But with these miracles came a command that would shake the bravest of men. Go to Pharaoh. Indeed, he has transgressed. Consider the weight of this order. Musa was a wanted man in Egypt. He had a speech impediment. He had no army, and he was being sent to the most ruthless dictator on earth to demand the liberation of an entire nation. It sounds like a suicide mission. And here lies the first profound lesson for us. When we are faced with our own pharaohs, our addictions, our fears, our oppressors, or our impossible situations, we ask ourselves, is there any hope? Can one person really make a difference? To answer this, we must transport ourselves to a time when the Nile flowed red with the blood of innocence, and and the sky over Egypt was darkened by the shadow of one man's ego. This is the story of Musa, AS, and Pharaoh, a clash not just of men, but of light against darkness, humility against arrogance, and the finite against the infinite. Let us set the scene. Egypt was the superpower of the ancient world. Its architecture was unmatched, its military invincible, and its wealth unimaginable. At the pinnacle of this civilization sat Pharaoh, a tyrant whose arrogance had swelled to such grotesque proportions that he looked upon his people and declared, "I am your Lord, the Most High." It was a society suffocating under the weight of his delusion. The children of Israel were enslaved, their backs broken by labor, their sons slaughtered in their infancy, and their dignity stripped away. It was a world devoid of hope, a world.
What happened next was a masterclass in deception. The Quran describes that they bewitched the eyes of the people and struck terror into them. They threw their ropes and staffs, and through their sorcery, it appeared to the massive crowd, and even to Musa himself, that the ground was alive with thousands of writhing snakes. The psychological impact was immense. The ground hissed, the people screamed. It was a wave of terrifying power. And here, the Quran reveals a deeply human moment. And Musa conceived a fear within himself. He saw the overwhelming visual dominance of falsehood. It looked real. It felt real. Have you ever felt that? When the lies of the world seem so strong, so dominant that you wonder if the truth stands a chance? In that split second of human vulnerability, Allah intervened. Fear not. Indeed, it is you who are superior. The command came. Throw what is in your right hand. Musa cast his staff. This was no longer an illusion. This was the truth swallowing falsehood. The staff became a beast that did not just look like a snake. It physically devoured the ropes and staffs of the magicians. It didn't just win, it annihilated their tools. The illusion vanished, the ropes were gone, the crowd gasped, but the most profound reaction came from the experts themselves. The magicians knew the limits of magic. They knew what was a trick and what was reality. They saw that what Musa had done was beyond human capability. In a shocking twist that Pharaoh never anticipated, the magicians, the very people hired to humiliate Musa, fell down in prostration. They didn't just say, "We give up." They cried out, "We believe in the Lord of Aaron and Moses." Imagine the scene. The defenders of the system became the believers in the message. This is the power of truth. When it strikes clearly, it penetrates the hardest of hearts. Pharaoh's humiliation was total. His narrative crumbled in front of his entire nation. His rage was volcanic. "You believed him before I gave you permission?" he screamed. He threatened them with one of the most brutal punishments recorded in history, to cut off their hands and feet on opposite sides and crucify them on the trunks of palm trees. He offered them a choice, recant or die in agony. But look at the transformation of faith. Minutes ago, these magicians were negotiating for money. Now, having tasted the sweetness of faith, they looked the tyrant in the eye and said, "We will never prefer you over what has come to us of clear proofs, and over he who created us. So decree whatever you are to decree. You can only decree for this worldly life." They chose death with dignity over life in submission to a lie. They chose the eternal over the temporary. This victory, however, was not the end of the struggle. It was only the beginning of the tribulation. Pharaoh did not bow. His heart hardened, calcified by pride. He unleashed a campaign of terror against the Israelites that was worse than before. The people of Musa came to him, complaining, "We have been harmed before you came to us and after you have come to us." They were losing hope. They expected an instant victory, a magical disappearance of their suffering. Musa AS
had to anchor them again in hope.
لمن حمده.
Perhaps your Lord will destroy your enemy and grant you succession in the land, and see how you will do. Then came the signs, the cosmic unraveling of Egypt. Allah decided to dismantle the arrogance of Pharaoh piece by piece, attacking the very sources of his pride. They worshipped the Nile, so the Nile was turned into blood. Can you imagine the horror? The lifeline of Egypt, the source of their water and agriculture, thick, red, and undrinkable. The stench filled the air. They begged Musa to pray for them, promising to let the Israelites go. Musa prayed, the blood cleared, and immediately they broke their promise. Then came the frogs, not just a few, but a plague that covered every inch of land. Frogs in their beds, in their food, in their clothes, the psychological torture of inescapable filth. Again they begged, again Musa prayed, and again they betrayed. Then lice, then locusts that devoured their crops, then a storm of unparalleled violence. Each sign was a sign of Qiyamah on a smaller scale, a warning to wake up. But the nature of a heart sealed by arrogance is that it sees the miracle but denies the source. They called it sorcery to explain away the divine. This is a critical lesson for us today. How many signs do we see in our own lives? How many wake-up calls, disasters, pandemics, personal losses, reminders that we are not in control? Do we turn back to Allah, or do we just wait for the problem to go away so we can return to our heedlessness? Pharaoh represents the ultimate heedlessness. He saw the power of God dismantling his kingdom, yet he clung to his throne of dust. As the plagues devastated Egypt, the final decree was issued. It was time to leave. But this would not be a simple exit. It would be a flight into the unknown. In the dead of night, the command came to Musa, "Travel by night with my servants. Indeed, you will be pursued." The gathering of the Israelites began in secret. Imagine the tension in the huts of the enslaved. Mothers hushing their crying babies, men gathering what little supplies they could carry, the old looking at their homes for the last time. They moved under the cover of darkness, a massive column of people walking towards the freedom they had only dreamed of. But Pharaoh's spies were everywhere. As the sun rose, the news reached the palace. The slaves were gone. The rage of Pharaoh consumed him. He did not just send an army, he gathered all his forces. He rallied the chariots, the elite guards, the entire military might of the empire. He led them himself, driven by a madness to possess and destroy. "They are but a small band, and indeed they are enraging us," he screamed. The chase began. The dust from the chariots clouded the horizon. The sound of galloping horses thundered across the desert floor. The Israelites were moving as fast as they could, but they were families, children, and the elderly. They were on foot. The Egyptian army was a machine of war. The narrative leads us to the shores of the Red Sea. This is the moment where logic fails and faith is tested to its breaking point. The Israelites reached the water's edge. In front of them, the vast, deep, churning sea. Behind them, the rising dust cloud of Pharaoh's army, the glint of spears, the roar of vengeance. They were trapped. Panic set in. The people screamed, "We are overtaken!" It was not just a statement, it was a cry of despair. They saw death in front of them and death behind them. In their eyes, the story was over. They were going to be slaughtered on the beach. But in the middle of this chaos, amidst the screaming children and the terrified men, Musa stood like a mountain. He did not look at the sea with despair, nor at the army with fear. He looked at the promise of Allah. His response is one of the most powerful statements of Tawakkul in the entire Quran. He said, "No, indeed with me is my Lord, He will guide me." The moment the wooden staff struck the surface of the Red Sea, the laws of physics were suspended by the one who created them. It did not happen gradually. It was a cataclysmic rupture in the fabric of nature, with a sound that must have drowned out the thunder of the approaching chariots. The dark waters tore apart. The sea didn't just recede, it stood up. The Quran describes the water rising like towering mountains. Imagine standing there, a small, fragile human being, looking up at walls of vibrating, translucent blue water hundreds of feet high. Inside those walls, you could perhaps see the marine life, suspended in awe, held back by an invisible hand. But the miracle was not just the water, it was the ground, the seabed which had been submerged for thousands of years, covered in slime, mud, and silt, was instantly made dry. It was a paved highway of salvation, carved through the belly of the ocean. Musa stepped forward, leading his people into the corridor of faith. The Israelites, clutching their children and their belongings, rushed into the passage. Can you imagine the adrenaline? To walk where no human had ever walked, with the threat of death behind you and the threat of drowning on either side, held at bay only by the promise of God. It was a test of trust with every single step. They could hear the roar of the wind and the terrifying stillness of the water walls. They moved with the desperate speed of survival. Meanwhile, on the shore, the army of Pharaoh arrived. They pulled their horses to a halt, the animals whinnying in terror at the sight before them. Pharaoh stared. For a moment, even he must have felt the chill of the divine. He saw a path opened up in the impossible. Logic dictated that he should turn back, that he should recognize that a power greater than him was.
The chariots thundered onto the seabed. The elite warriors of Egypt, the pride of the empire, rode into the trap set by the Almighty. They pursued the believers into the heart of the sea. The Israelites were reaching the other side, scrambling up the banks of freedom, their hearts pounding against their ribs. The last of them stepped out of the seabed just as the entire army of Pharaoh was fully enclosed within the corridor of water. Musa, now safe on the opposite shore, looked back. The instinct of a warrior might be to keep the path open or to run further, but the command of Allah is precise. He was told to leave the sea as it is. But then the decree came. The cage was to be closed. The walls of water held up by the command of Be were released. Millions of tons of water crashed down with the force of a collapsing planet. The sound must have been deafening, a roar of judgment. The chariots were crushed like toys. The horses were swept away. The soldiers, clad in heavy armor, sank like stones. And in the middle of this swirling, chaotic vortex of death was the tyrant himself, Pharaoh, the man who claimed to be a god, the man who had slaughtered babies, the man who had made a nation tremble. Now, he was thrashing in the cold, salty water, choking on his own hubris. The water did not care for his crown. The waves did not respect his title. In that moment of absolute helplessness, facing the undeniable reality of death, the veil was lifted from his eyes. He gasped, swallowing water in terror, and cried out, "I believe that there is no deity except him in whom the children of Israel believe, and I am of the Muslims." He tried to say the password. He tried to sign the contract of faith, but it was too late. The time for the test was over. The time for the results had begun. The response from the heavens was chilling and final. Now? And you had disobeyed before and were of the corruptors? The door of repentance remains open until the soul reaches the throat, until the veil of the unseen is lifted. Pharaoh had seen the truth his whole life and rejected it. He only accepted it when he had no other choice. His declaration was not out of love for God, but out of fear of the consequences. Allah did not just destroy him, He made him a sign for every generation to come. The body of Pharaoh was not lost to the depths. It was not eaten by the creatures of the sea. Allah commanded the earth and the sea to preserve him. So today, we will save you in body,
that you may be to those who succeed you a sign. His lifeless, waterlogged corpse washed up on the shore, stripped of all gold, all armies, and all dignity. The Israelites, who had feared this man as an invincible monster, looked upon his dead body. They saw that he was just a man, mortal, weak, defeated. It was the ultimate closure. The nightmare was over. The God King was dead, and the one true God, Allah, remained ever living. This story, my dear friends, is not just ancient history. It is a mirror for our souls and a map for our lives. Why does Allah tell us this story more than any other in the Quran? Because we all have a Pharaoh, and we all have a Red Sea. Sometimes, the Pharaoh is not a person. It is an addiction that enslaves us. It is a depression that tells us there is no way out. It is a financial crisis that threatens to drown our families. It is a sin that we arrogantly hold on to, thinking we have time to repent later. We look at our problems and we see the massive army behind us and the blocked ocean in front of us. We feel panicked. We feel the panic that the Israelites felt. We say, "I am overtaken." But remember the words of Musa. He did not have a plan. He had a provider. He did not see the path. He knew the guide. Nay, indeed, with me is my Lord. He will guide me. This is the level of Iman, faith we need to cultivate. When the doctor says there is no cure, when the bank says there is no loan, when the world says it is over, that is your Red Sea moment. That is when you must strike the water with the staff of your dua, prayer. You might not see the path open immediately. You might have to get your feet wet. You might have to walk into the darkness. But if you walk with Allah, the impossible becomes inevitable. And there is a darker warning here too. We must look inside ourselves and ask, is there a seed of Pharaoh in my heart? Do I reject the truth when it comes to me because it hurts my pride? Do I look down on others? Do I think I am in control of my destiny, independent of Allah? Pharaoh didn't start by claiming to be God. He started with arrogance, and it grew. We must kill the Pharaoh within us before it drowns us. We must humble ourselves before the waves of life crash down. Do not wait for the moment of death to say, "I believe." Do not wait until the calamity strikes to turn back to the prayer mat. The time to build the ark is before the rain. The time to believe is before the soul reaches the throat. The victory of Musa was not because of his strength, it was because of his submission. He was a man who stuttered, yet he silenced a king. He was a shepherd, yet he led a nation. He was a fugitive, yet he became a victor. This tells us that Allah does not need our perfection, He needs our sincerity. He needs us to take the first step. If we take one step towards Allah, He comes to us running. If we rely on our own intellect and power, like Pharaoh, we will find ourselves drowning in the very things we tried to control. But if we rely on Allah, He will make a way out for us from where we never imagined. As we conclude this journey today, I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Think of the biggest trial you are facing right now. Visualize it. It looks intimidating, doesn't it? It looks like a tyrant standing over you. Now, remember the image of the Red Sea splitting. Remember the body of the tyrant lying motionless on the sand. The same God who split the sea for Musa is hearing your breath right now. The same God who humiliated Pharaoh is capable of removing your burden in the blink of an eye, but He is waiting for you to trust Him. He is waiting for you to stop looking at the storm and start looking at the Creator of the storm. Don't let the despair of the Israelites in your mind take over. Be like Musa. Stand firm. Speak truth to your fears. Tell your problems, "My Lord is with me." The path will open. It might not be the path you expected, but it will be the path of salvation. If this story shook your heart, if it reminded you of the power of the Almighty, then do not let this feeling fade as soon as the video ends. Make a promise to yourself and to Allah right now that you will seek Him before the seas of life swallow you, that you will be a person of faith not just in ease, but in the heat of the chase. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history and faith. We hope this story has ignited a fire of hope and a shiver of necessary fear in your soul. Until next time, keep your heart connected to the heavens, for that is the only safety in a world of storms. This is Divine Sagas, reminding you that every story has an end, but the story of your return to Allah begins now. Peace be upon you.